Hey everyone, the new Scarlet and Violet cards are released. This is something to look forward to, I imagine. Wow, there's lots of good stuff to look forward to. And then we get to Professor's Research. Professor's Research is by far one of the worst cards to come into the game. Regardless of your opinion on consistency supporters as a whole, formats with Professor's Research, Professor Juniper, and Professor Sycamore are formats that rely on speed and aggression and often don't care about the resources discarded. These also severely limit deck building. A lot of decks, especially in the early Sword and Shield era when we had just rotated, were stuck playing 4 Research and 4 Marnie and then 2 to 4 copies of Boss, and that was the supporter engine for most non-welder decks. And the reason for that is that these supporters are just objectively better than most other supporters. So until we got cards like Irida way later on that are really good specific to types, these cards like Research are just objectively better and really hinder any kind of deck building in the game. It almost feels like 52 cards of a 60 card deck are essentially put together for you nowadays. Along with that, these cards also really increase game speed. This isn't always true, because back in 2011 these cards were legal, but the games were still somewhat long form because there was all single prizers. However, especially with the introduction of Ultra Ball and the 2 prizers with Tark Explorers in 2012, the game really sped up to a breakneck speed. These Research cards just don't punish you for getting rid of resources, even though you're discarding your entire hand and just getting 7 new cards, because realistically, the game's only going to last about 5 turns anyway, so why does it matter if you discard extra copies of cards you don't need? Probably worst of all is these cards' effect on skill-based gameplay. These cards do not function in any sort of way to provide the game with skill-based search cards. They just give you 7 new cards and you either find it there or not. Thinning is a very low-tier skill that just about any player can do once they get used to playing the game, and thinning properly is not that much higher. These cards really only promote luck-based draw, whereas cards like Irida, cards in the past like Green's Exploration, and even far before that, cards like Roseanne's Research, really make the most out of a player, forcing them to make tough decisions where there is a right answer, but there's also 10 other answers that are equally almost as good. Along with that, these cards really make the game samey. This is like the 8th Research that we've had at this point, and they're reprinting this card again for the 4th year in a row. What this means is that when we go back to these formats in the past, these formats are going to look incredibly similar because each of these formats is going to almost revolve around half of the decks at least using these discard draw 7 along with the respective boss's orders that will also likely be printed later on based on the indication we've received so far. Here we have a comment from Stefan Roche, credit to him for making this rebuttal. And he says, I've been playing for 7 years. I've played in formats without discard draw 7. The format was 4 Cynthia, 4 Lily. It's about the same right now with Research and Marnie. So I don't get what your point is if everyone just plays 4 of the best draw supporters in each format. However, that couldn't be farther from the truth. When you look to Sun and Moon to Lost Thunder, yes, the decks initially played 4 Lily and 4 Cynthia, as well as 4 Elm in the Zoroark and Evolving based decks. The format quickly evolved, and deck lists nowadays can a lot of times be focused on a lot of tech supporters, especially decks revolving around draw engines like the Swampert engine and the Zoroark GX draw engine. They can put in cards like Judge, they can put in cards like Kukui in lots of decks, Tate and Liza in a lot of decks, Olivia in Zoroark decks specifically, and as well as Sophocles, just to name a few of the cards that really make the format more than just 4 Cynthia and Lily. It is a fair point to be made by many that these cards don't actively just destroy the game. It is mainly their interactions with other cards that do, and that's fair. However, these cards do just generally are a part of making the game worse. These cards make the game faster, they make evolutions harder to play, and they really just reward gameplay that's speedy and aggressive over gameplay that's more skill-based and long-term. They just make the game much less fun, and I know we can do better, because we have had these formats in the past without these cards, and they are better. And that's what I want. I just want the game to return to a state one day where we're not just dumping our hand and drawing 7 every turn to win the game in 5 minutes. I want this long-term, thought-provoking gameplay that makes me come back to 2010 all of the time to play. People aren't going to come back to this format in years. People aren't going to fondly remember 2020's 4 research and 4 money in every deck. People aren't going to come back because they remember how fun it was to play these cards. Because these cards aren't fun to play.